I'm Ed Adams, and you're listening to the AAFCA Podcast. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the AAFCA Podcast. And in this episode, we're celebrating the magic of movies with a discussion about the new Academy Museum of Motion Pictures with architect and designer Kulapat Yantrasast. I'll walk you through it all after the break. The AAFCA Podcast is sponsored by Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment. Last fall, the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences opened the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, a 300,000 square foot facility to, as their mission statement states, advances the understanding, celebration, and preservation of cinema through inclusive and accessible exhibitions, screenings, programs, initiatives, and collections. Now, this spectacular monument to cinema was designed by renowned architect Renzo Piano, who transformed the historical Saban building in Los Angeles into a 6-story cultural space that includes event spaces, 2 theaters, the Shirley Temple Education Studio, the Debbie Reynolds Conservation Studio, a restaurant, and of course, exhibition spaces. Now, the 31,000 square feet dedicated to exhibits was designed by Kulapat Yantrasast, creative director of Y, a multidisciplinary design practice. Now, Kulapat is an award-winning architect and designer who is no stranger to breathing life into museum spaces. Some of the firm's projects include the Grand Rapids Arts Museum in Michigan, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, the Speed Art Museum in Louisville, Kentucky, the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, and Y is currently working on the Perm Tchaikovsky Opera and Ballet Theater in Russia. Now, Kulapat received the Silpathorne Award for Design in Thailand in 2009, and in 2012, he was named one of the most powerful people in the art world by Art and Auction magazine. And the firm Y, they were listed in Architectural Digest AD 100, their annual survey of top names in interior decoration, architecture, and landscape design in 2020. Now, I had a chance to chat with Kulapat via Zoom recently to discuss his contribution to the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, his approach to design, and the future of museum design. Thank you so much for being a part of the AAFCA Podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Oh, me too, actually. Yes, absolutely.
We have some things in common. When I was doing my research, there's 2 things that I just absolutely love about you. So you have 2 things that I am totally down with. One is jumpsuits.
Oh, I have no idea. Tell me more.
I love jumpsuits. They're the most functional and practical thing you can put on. I wear them.
I could not agree more. Absolutely. And one thing you might not know, which I really like, this is how I start wearing them in Japan, is that on a construction site, right? Mm-hmm. In Japan, it's not so much here in America, but surprisingly in Cuba, they still do that, is that different trades have different colors. Right? So the painter have the white one, the electrician have the blue one, the plumber have the green one, and some other have the yellow one. So that when you look at a construction site, you know exactly who's going to do what.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that part I saw that in Japan, 20-some years ago. I was like, that's a good system. And it's kind of like, and it make everyone kind of know each other, because on the construction side, most of the time people don't know each other.
Yeah.
Right. But when they're on, it's almost kind of a teamwork, military type of thing. But anyway, so I love that aspect as well.
Nice. I did not know that. I actually like.
You're not wearing a jumpsuit, so you're
I
not
am
a true
not.
believer.
I know now.
You're not a true believer.
Well, it was okay. Full disclosure: I didn't do laundry. I just didn't.
Too much information.
Right. So the other thing that we have in common is cocktails. I read that you like cocktails. Is that true?
I do. I did talk about cocktail and architecture. I just like. I mean, I like normal spirits and wine as well, but cocktails, it's kind of the coming together of the flavors, right? The different strengths and weakness and things, and I feel like it's just so delightful.
Absolutely. I found that it's like liquid alchemy, right? It's you never know what you're
Yeah.
going to get, but you always find some amazing things no matter where you go.
Yeah, especially because, I got hooked again because I spent so much time in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I lived there for 15 years and continue to go back often. Is that they have a very, like when you go to like a good cocktail bar, it's like a tea ceremony, right? People there, they shave the ice, they do this ice thing, and they start putting things in. So it's like a one special gift that someone take, almost like a tea ceremony, and they hand it over to you, and they think about who you are, if they know you, what you like to test, and is it what time in the evening you're thinking about. So just all of this care and attention going to this gift, which is, like you said, it's an alchemy by itself anyway. I love that component of it as well.
I love it. We're here.
Exactly. Well,
so one of the things I saw on your site is that you use this phrase, acupuncture architecture. And I wanted to know, can you talk to me about that? And how does that drive you and your team's approach to what you do?
Well, thank you. I think it was almost a reaction to the idea that architects, and a lot of people think that everything is start from a blank page. Right? I think we've done so much destruction by thinking that nothing exists before us, and we can start from scratch. That there's like what they call tabula rasa. Right, like something. I mean, but in real life, there's no such thing. There's no because even if you have a blank piece of land, you still have neighbors, you still have weather, you still have city and places and context and things. So in that context, I see my work as architecture that helps to acupuncture city and things, right? I mean, it started from old building when I work to renovate or expand all historic building. I feel like my job is not to give it a facelift. My job is to give it an acupuncture so that it stimulates the old life, assuming that the building and the museum have a life. You kind of, intervene in a way at the strategic moments, right? Acupuncture points. And it kind of solved the problem of circulation. It solved the problem of many things that each building or museum would have. And it not only just add on something to it, but it rejuvenated the whole body. So that was a metaphor, but it just expand on to talk about how when you build something in the city, you're not only just fulfilling your own dream within your own boundary, you actually acupuncture the whole city. You make the neighborhood better. You make the city better by your addition. Yeah.
Okay. So about the Academy project, can you talk to me about what was your company's role on this project?
Thank you. So the company is called Y, and I'm the founder, creative director. So we are the main exhibit designer of all of the exhibit design in the galleries, which is mostly almost all the floor from first, second, and third, and fourth, which is special exhibitions we did not work on, but sometimes we might. So we were brought on to work on the project for 2019 to work with the growing team of curators and director, and of course the whole member of the Academy, to really tell the diverse stories that come together. So that's our role. And so we work closely with them, through COVID also, to open the museum just this year.
So can you talk to me a little bit about what was that collaboration process like? Because, it's not just the Academy, it's also the members and other parts. Like, how was that collaboration process? And can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think that's why it's taken all this time, right? Because there's a lot of diverse opinions, a lot of roles, everyone's busy, everyone might have different ideas about what the museum would be. But the way that we work it is that there are 16 or 17 branches of the Academy, right? I mean, and they all have their own task force. If you're in the casting section or member of the Academy, you have a task force from your group that talk about how casting should be represented in the story. If you're acting or costume or special effects or sound effects, they all have to, among your peer, you have a group that dedicated by that guild to talk about, okay, well, how can we represent not only the excellence in our job, but how do people who might not even understand what we do in a film understand our contribution? So that was come through the task force. And the task force, each of these task forces come together. And we also have another museum task force that talked about how all of these come together. Again, just like cocktail, like what we talked about. So there's an idea of, because, in the world today, we have to be willing to confront complexity. It has to be, nothing is exclusive, right? Everything has to come together. We have to be patient. We have to listen. We have to find a complex solution. It is just the same way. How do we, create this? So in that mode, we have after the brief, we have a clear idea how each of the branches of Academy are interested in see how the museum come together, because it is a museum, it's a film museum, but it's a film museum that belongs to the Academy in America. So everything is all ground down to the specialty of the identity. And so we work with them very closely. So one of the things that we propose that the like is that, museum of film should be moving. It should not be still, right? It's the idea that exhibit can be easily changed. A lot of this can be digital. Even the physical objects, we have case design that we can change the object very quickly, so that allow the different story to rotate, different objects, different film to represent it. So that also allow the members of the committee to feel like, okay, well, the opening shows this, but the many other things can come through that make the museum more of a kind of a vibrant, changing scene rather than just a stuck kind of physical place that you go and every time it's the same story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, from my understanding, this is a non-linear view of cinema and movie making. Can you talk, you kind of elaborate on a little bit. Can you kind of expand on why not tell the history of film and more of the aspects of it? You kind of mentioned that there was different task force, but is that the sole reason, or is this something that you had in design?
I think it's from the get-go as well, working with the curatorial teams as well. I think, again, I always see myself as the matchmaker between art and people, right? You're in the position to do that. And the story of art can be told in so many ways. Chronology is one, right? You start from when something started, like film. You start from when the Lumiere brothers started, camera was invented, you go through shadow play, you go through right things. And maybe 2 hours after that, the visitors will remember the movie they saw, right? So you already lost them if you go through that. It's not a bad thing, but in this case, we felt that, film is such a living form that to start from the history, there's a lot of history in the exhibit. It's just not linear, like exactly what you said. So what we do is we want to also talk about achievement. So when you come in the museum, it starts with 6 movable vignettes, changeable vignettes, right? These are something that could change over time, right? For the opening show that we have one dedicated to Citizen Kane with Rosebud, one representing biography, biopics, storytelling. We have Bruce Lee, talk about action, right? We have African American movie history. We have movie deal with feminism and women. We have cinematography by itself. We have history of women in filmmaking. So a lot of these are vignettes that can be changed. Awesome. But at least when people come through, they see vignettes of things like, oh, film is what I can make it, right? Because you don't have to go back to the Lumiere brothers to feel yourself in the history. So it's more of starting from where they are rather than where you are, right? Gotcha. So people can kind of quickly get like, okay, I have a piece in here. So because the problem with museum in general is that people go to museum to look at something they should have. Like, oh, this is what is culture. This is what civilization. Film is not. You already have it. We all have our own film engagement. So to allow everyone to feel comfortable and already engaged in that experience, you have to start with sometime where they are and take them deep into history, take them deep into controversy, take them into the different techniques and artistic achievement that different fields of filmmaking provide. Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the things that I was really curious about is the technical aspects of filmmaking that the museum kind of features. And I was wondering, like, how did you approach the problem of not just showing and educating the public about parts of the industry that they rarely may not know about, like we're talking about, like with casting. Like, so how did you approach showing these things, like the technical aspects of it, like just lenses? How did you approach adding those to this museum?
Well, thank you. I think you can do it in many ways, but it is a museum, right? Not a textbook. So therefore, people are in the space. So they should experience that with their own bodies, with their own senses, and they see the difference, the deepen of the understanding. So in this case, the task force come in so strongly because they really give us the feedback and the footages and the tools and the objects to work with them. Like what we say, how do you talk about sound editing? Which is, so, in that case, we work with, Skywalker sound to kind of, you see Indiana Jones, the scene that everyone remember when he was trying to get the objects. And so you see the film without the sound and the different layers into it. And if you sit there for a minute, you understand, the experience that I took for granted is all these layerings of sound and effect that come through. The same thing with casting. When you see, 4 or 5 actors casting for the same role, and you see snippets of this, and you feel like, oh my God, the casting director, they're kind of like star discoverers, right? They need to be able to discern someone that are just maybe never been heard of, but that qualities that come through these casting tapes are just amazing. So by showing, people can experience, they quickly understand, there's a craft and art in what everyone's doing here. It's not just about picking someone off, So I think we're trying to do that through, as little text as possible, because we're not a textbook, right? So everyone should be able to learn from their own experience, looking, listening, touching, feeling things, because you're in a physical space.
Let's talk about, you kind of hit on this already, but like the elephant in the room, or say is really about how essential it is about storytelling is also, understanding the cultural relevancy of the story, right? And I'm curious about how the museum kind of really addresses that issue of diversity and, more importantly, the international cultural contributions to film.
I think that's also part of the reason why the chronological flow doesn't really quite work, right? Because the same thing that if you have art or music, I think the world we live in, it's a diaspora. It's a mixture of so many things. Of course, if you go back to the root and try to follow it through, it become Eurocentric, or some aspect of things that which it's undeniable, but it's not that relevant. So the way that we, of course, based heavily on the task force and the curators as well, is the idea that we want to make sure that it's not only just one voice, it's always multiple voices talking about the story. When we talk about casting, it's not just one voice. It talked about cases in history that, a minority actor should play a minority role but didn't get played, but was replaced by a white person, for example. But we talked about that as well. So talked about like the troubles or the problems we have in the past of perceptions and how to really bring in. I think on this note, the curators are very mindful and very proactive in really wanting these. Of course, from now on, that's what they want to do more. They want to highlight more international voices. For example, we have Pedro Almodovar, who's one of our carte blanche, artists who curated one of the space. Spike Lee, curated another space, and these are carte blanche. They can do anything they want. Pedro decided to show a series of his short films with his posters. So when you walked in, you feel like you're in this beautiful world of his creation. Right, Spike decided to create this almost like you walk into his head. You see the memorabilia, you see the jersey, you see the poster of movies that were in his office. So you kind of see his own work in the context of his inspiration and his story. So these kind of allow people to think, someone like me, like, oh, I can make film from where I am. I don't have to belong to a pantheon or a trajectory to be able to add to that art, right? So I think that enabling effect, even though it's quite unconscious, is important because people can start, when they come back to their bedroom, they never look at their own bedroom the same way again. Well, my bedrooms have the same object that Spike Lee has in his room. So I can start making film from all these objects I collect, from basketball jersey to memorabilia, from So I think it allows us to kind of re-examine our life, and it presents not just one type of heroes, but so many type of heroes that you can look at and say, well, I can be like that. So I think the museum is trying to do that, and for me, it's so important because I think that film lovers, especially young people, will go to this museum. And they will figure out like, okay, I really want to be an actor. I want to be a screenwriter. They will find their place in these different, kind of collaboration communities, and they can find their own place there. So that's what I felt. The diversity, the story, it's not just about race. It's about ages. It's about walk of life and many things. But by really engaging different voices at the same time coming together, and you can really find your own tribe, you can find your own process in this creative kind of train.
I absolutely love it. I have a question. I was thinking about, like, I was reading that there's like, when you think about the archive of all the things that they actually have available to them, I was curious about not just the collaborative process to unpack that inventory, but also can you talk to me a little bit about the editing process? How did you decide and choose what to have and what not to have? What is that editing process like?
Well, that's $1 million question, right? I think, well, in this case, we are, of course, the curators are the main who made decisions on the selection. But we are also very involved in that because we're the one who suggests on the spaces and the display and the exhibit designs and things like that. And one good thing about this particular museum is designed to be changeable. So, it's not like, if you pick these objects or this footage, the rest of that will never see the light of day. I think we plan, in many waves of things. So like these objects might be selected for the first group, but 6 months later or a year later, these other objects will be displayed as well. So it brings a lot more comfort to everyone, right? Because it's not a short list. I mean, it's a moment. It's an exhibition, not rather than a permanent installation. Mm-hmm. So in the same way, a lot of the objects are on loan. All the Oscars are on loan from the recipients. So the Oscar in the Oscar room will change depending on, we borrow this for 6 months, for a year, it get returned to the owners, the next one come in. I mean, the objects in the costume section might change. We designed the exhibit so that all of these things are changeable. All the labels are digital, so everything is allowed so that you don't have to feel like, oh, even not in the opening show, I'm not included in the pantheon. The pantheon will be moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that but of course for the first show, we really focus on how we tell the story of the Academy, of the film history, but also of America as we are in today. So those criteria are important to talk about. There's a big room, which is one of the highlights, that we talk about the art of movie making, that how all of the traits come together. And it was my idea to use the movie Wizard of Oz as the ambassador, right? So because the Academy has such a strong footage and a big collection of objects from that film, because it's one of the first film in Los Angeles, right? And bringing everything together. We have the ruby slippers, we have all the costumes, we have all the black and white photograph, we have the set, we have the camera, we have all of that. So I think using that film as a case study to say, well, this is how film come together. This is what the costume design for the Wizard of Oz look like. This is the set design. This is the editing. This is the casting. And when people look at that, but then we juxtapose it that what the same trade or the same art is being done now or later, right? So it using so therefore in the first one we kind of give a little bit of an intro to the collaborative arts of film too. So there's a lot of selection of objects that relate to that collaboration.
Okay, thank you for that. So my final question is, when I looked at your body of work, and I'm just a fast fan and admirer of your work and your talent. But it feels to me like you create living, breathing spaces. And I'm curious, what is your takeaway for people who come to see this museum?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think that's what that's music to my ears. So, thank you. And now that we know we love jumpsuit and cocktails, it's even another level of fan club here. But thank you. No, I really feel that because and we have instinct, right? When you walk into a room, we know which room is alive, which room is dead, what conversation is alive, what conversation is dead, right? And I think that we all have our kind of intrinsic instinct to know what attracts to us. And for me, especially for a project like these museums and other, it's important to let people discover. Right? No one wants to be told. No one wants to be directed and narrated. So you have, again, I use the word matchmaker a lot because I feel that the job of a matchmaker is so underappreciated. Right? For me, I feel like I'm a matchmaker between art and people. So my job is, as an architect, is to create, and a matchmaker meaning that you know each party, the artists and the art lovers, but they don't know each other yet. You put together a setting, you create a beautiful, uplifting space. The art should feel comfortable, good lighting, good proportion. The art feel uplifted in that space. People should come in and also feel like this is not a dead space. This is not a mausoleum. People immediately feel like, oh, I can see the sky, I can see outside. I feel comfortable in this place as a human being. And then once people feel comfortable, they feel like, oh, there's something nice about this space. The lighting is really nice and the object look nice. I want to know more about that. You trigger the curiosity by letting them be themselves, right? And then when they get curious, they look closely at the painting, like, oh, what is that, right? And once they do that, they continue to have their own chain reaction of wanting to know more. And that's kind of my job. My job is not to look at this mausoleum of timeless art. There's a painting on the wall. You might not know this, but you must know this to be a cultivated person, right? That's the old world of museums, and that's dead. So I think on that note, back to your question, it's so important to create a space that feels living, because we are living, and we walk into a place when you feel something is alive. You want to be part of it. You want to be, and I feel, especially after COVID, it's so important for museums to be sites of empathy, that we need people to love and understand each other, at least be curious by each other, then understand and then love, right? But if people are not curious and already kind of write off other people without sense of curiosity and empathy, then the world will be a very difficult place for us all to live together. So museums as a site of empathy is important. So, but in this case, it's not just about the art, it's about people. And people need to feel welcome. People need to feel appreciated. And people need to feel like, oh, they've been allowed to explore with their senses. So, I hope I give you some answers to that. But that's kind of who I am as well. So I like to design something that allows people to be curious.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been a really great experience for me. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your time and your talent.
Well, thank you, Ed, and I hope we have a chance to meet in person. When we'll wear jumpsuit and drink cocktails together.
That was Kulapat Yantrasast, creative director of Why, about the exhibition space at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. Now, if you would like to know more about the museum, I encourage you to check out their website, where you can take a tour of the museum, learn about their ongoing exhibitions like the Oscar Experience, and get details on current and previous exhibitions on display. And that's our show. Thanks to Kulapat Yantrasast and his team for making this interview possible. Now, did you know that AAFCA celebrates diversity and inclusion with a series of events, AAFCA Spotlight discussions, and screenings? Well, we do. And you can stay up to date with all our programming by visiting our website at www.aafca.com. So until next time, keep your head up.